us from wherever you be across the country. This session will be recorded and taking place right now. So, and you will receive the recordings afterwards. Once you've signed up and registered, we'll email you all the live presentation as well. So now it's an exciting time. We have another whole year's worth of funding for the program. So we kind of wanted to bring it back up to the forefront and just refresh your memories, your minds, or if this is your first time hearing about the program, we want to let you know how this funding works and how it can benefit your organization and company right now. We'll go to the next slide, please. So with us today, presenting, you'll hear from Camille Polcher. She's the Student Work Placement Program Project Manager here at Food Processing Skills Canada. She knows the program inside and out. So you're going to get to be able to ask any of your questions as well at the end of the session. So we're hoping to go about 45 minutes and then we'll be able to delve into some questions. So Camille's here to answer those questions and we will be here as well. We have Alyssa Kuron, who's the Business Development and Industry Strategist at the University of Waterloo. So she's coming from an academic perspective of, how to get the students to work with your businesses and how she actually maneuvers that landscape in terms of letting them know about the criteria, getting them interested and involved in wanting to work in the food industry. The University of Waterloo has been a great partner over the past years with the Student Work Placement Program, and she's here to share her expertise on that. Then we have Samantha Sturges, who's from Talent Acquisition Campus Manager from FGF Brands Inc. I believe she was actually a co-op student herself at one point, and now is actually working in the industry and has great advice, I think, from an employer standpoint on how to bring in students into your workplace, get them integrated into the program or into your companies and bring that new breath of fresh air that some of us may need and do some different types of work on different projects within our organizations or help out with an existing project or program. Maybe you need to get your website updated and so forth. So there's a lot of different avenues that students can participate within our companies and within the program. So she's going to bring that employer perspective to the webinar today. So we're going to go through this, obviously, a bit about FPSC, what is SWPP, the benefits of hiring a co-op student. We're going to walk you through briefly the terms and applications of the back-end system of the SWPP program, funding structure, the program eligibility and requirements. How do you find an eligible student? Sometimes that's one of the hardest parts. Of being a part of the program is finding the right student to fit within your organization. We're going to go through the application process, the program impacts, and some of the benefits to your organizations. So about Food Processing Skills Canada, we're a workforce development organization. We are national. We are not-for-profit. We're located here in Ottawa. We do have a large team, but we want to have the best trained employees, businesses, and so forth in the Canadian food and beverage manufacturing sector. That is our goal. We know we have over 14,000 businesses. We're the largest manufacturing sector in Canada, and we are now elevating the standard. We're already globally renowned and known for our workforce, for our employees, for our workforce development structures that we have in place here within Canada. So a lot of other countries are looking at us globally for some of those standards that we've developed and created. We have the largest database of food manufacturing skills in the world globally. We have an awesome learning and recognition framework that shows you the career pathways of individuals within our sector and certifications and training programs and you name it. So, and a lot of funded programs. We really want to help Canadian businesses during this time with all the uncertainty that's going on, but providing you with any funding or access to funding that can help you with your businesses during this period of time. So we have quite a few funded programs that are available to you. So you want to make sure you go to our website and check that out to see what other types of funding you could receive as part of learning more about Food Processing Skills Canada. Next slide. So like we mentioned, there's a lot of tools and resources that we have in areas that we deal with. Go to the next slide. Skills and competencies, certification of workers, accreditation. We deal with immigration. We have a lot of industry supports as well, but a lot of great leading edge programs that you don't want to miss and take advantage of. So please, like I mentioned, go to the website and learn more about some of the other funded programs that could be available to you. We have a great team here. We've been around for quite a while. Since 1997. We're located in Ottawa, like I mentioned. We have, pretty good sized staff here of 25 folks or so that are managing and dealing with all of our programs. Like I mentioned, we're not-for-profit organization, but we're here to serve you. At the end of the day, we really want to serve our food and beverage manufacturing family, or if you're along the spectrum or the supply chain of the food industry, we want to support you as best as possible. This past year, we've had some great engagement with industry, including through this program. We've been able to give away $13.2 million where we've reimbursed companies for the students they've hired at their businesses and places of work. We've engaged with over 750 businesses all across the sectors and subsectors of the industry. We've hired 995 students this past year, which is awesome. We have more funding this year, so we want to give away as much money as possible. We have a disabilities program as well that's of no cost, that's fully funded. We had our first leadership summit. We've trained over 1,500 supervisors this past year. We're currently training 800 frontline workers now. We have a whole spectrum, I think, of resources and programming, but our goal is to really impact the industry and demonstrate those impacts and what we've brought to the table. So like I mentioned, these are just some of the programs, and you will get this presentation after we are done, so you can definitely learn more about that and all the funding that we have. So please be sure to check that out. So now I'm going to turn over the rest of the webinar to Camille Polcha, who's going to bring us through the entire SWPP program and also introduce you to the rest of her team. Camille.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jennifer, for that wonderful walkthrough of FPSC and who we are and what it is that we do. I'm happy to speak with you this afternoon about the Student Work Placement Program. We operate as a pretty small team, but very effective in what it is that we do. This is who we are. This is a makeup of our team behind the scenes, how we administer this wonderful avenue for program funding. I'm here as a program manager. We also have here on support on the call today, we have Tiffany Galvez, who is our project coordinator. And if we need any additional support from our bilingual outreach manager, we have Francine Giselle Mercury also on the call this afternoon. Our team spans multiple role of functions, and we're just grateful that we have the opportunity to share with you about the program today. So the Student Work Placement Program is designed to offer a wage subsidy of up to $7,000 per term to employers who hire college or university students for a co-op work term. SWPP is supported by partners in industry and in education. So we're talking about colleges, universities, polytechnics, to deliver wage subsidies to employers that offer quality student work placements. We're also serving in a way of convening educators and employers to help align post-secondary education curricula to the skills needed in the industry. We are all about workforce development, and this is one avenue that we're able to do that. So this is one way that we're able to do so. This program is funded by ESDC. Food Processing Skills serves as a delivery partner for the food and beverage industry. So that means that we're dealing with our food and beverage processors or cannabis edibles manufacturers or food-related associations or retailers and grocery delivery partners or caterers, etc. We are all about food, building food and what that means. There are other delivery partners, and so we focus specifically on food processing and what that means in its entirety. Now, what are the benefits of hiring a co-op student? I am sure that Alyssa can speak probably more to that than I can, but we are able to, through hiring co-op students, allow for employers to gain fresh and innovative ideas from trained and motivated students. Right now, we know that these students are bringing in fresh perspective, they're bringing in fresh talent, they're able to tackle projects that you otherwise would not have been able to get to. They're able to offset some of your operational expenses, they're able to fill that gap for smaller needs that you need to get done in case you're not in a position to deal with full-time hires. So there's an entire benefit of hiring post-secondary students for a 16-week term to come and join your company. Currently, the SWPP program, we operate in conjunction with the academic terms offered by post-secondary institutions. So we're still accepting applications for our summer 2025 term. Those are open now. The next term we will be having will be fall 2025, which runs from September to December. Applications typically open for a term about 2 months prior to the start of the term. So for our fall term, we will be opening applications on July 2nd. And similarly for our winter 2026 term, which will be January to April 2026, we'll be opening applications on October 3rd. We share this information because we want for our employers to be able to access this funding, not just right now in the immediate, but that you can plan going forward what your needs are and how you can connect with a post-secondary institution to find an eligible student for that time period, right? We know that the universities start with their co-op placements before the start of the term. So having an idea of the application windows definitely will help in terms of how you plan for your organization going forward, whether it is for finding a student or also for submitting an application for funding. It's also important to note that if you decide that you would like to hire a student and would like the benefit of accessing up to $7,000 in funding for each of your students, that it would be good to know beforehand if your placement is likely to be approved or not for funding. So we always encourage our employees to start their process before the start of the term. That would give us the time to review the employer eligibility, review the student eligibility, and be able to confirm, yes, this placement will be eligible for reimbursement at the end of the term. Currently, we offer 2 streams of funding through this program. We have our first stream of funding, which we will consider our increased subsidy stream. This stream offers 70% of wages up to $7,000 for underrepresented students, right? So as a reimbursement program for eligible placements, we will do our calculations at the end of the term to determine how much gross wages were paid for the student and be able to determine how much of that you would be eligible to be reimbursed for. For underrepresented students or increased subsidy, we're talking about women in STEM, we're talking about Indigenous students, persons with disabilities, visible minorities, newcomers, as well as first-year students. It's important to note that this program is offered exclusively for domestic students, Canadian students, whether they are citizens or permanent residents or refugees with the appropriate documentation. But when we're talking about the context of increased subsidy, I wanted to make sure that we're very clear about the parameters of this program and what that offers. So 70% of funding, 70% of wages up to $7,000 for increased subsidy placements. And then for standard subsidy placements, that's those that do not fall within the increased subsidy category, they can access 50% of wages up to $5,000 of the gross wages paid for each of those student placements. I spoke a little bit about the eligibility requirements, but I also wanted to just talk a little bit more about what exactly that means. So from an employer standpoint, we are expecting or we include registered Canadian businesses. So you must be able to provide us with your 9-digit CRA number. We are not talking about federal or provincial organizations. Post-secondary institutions are themselves not eligible for funding through this program. And employers need to note that they must be involved in the food and beverage processing industry, as we have previously indicated. They're also required by law to pay the mandatory employment-related costs for their employees. So we're talking about having them on staff. We're not talking about having them on contract or short-term placements where we're not dealing with the deductions. All statutory deductions must be made for the students in order to be eligible for reimbursement. As a reimbursement program, it's also important to note that employers are also required to pay in full their students prior to receiving any funding for the program. So they're responsible for covering the wages of their student. As a reimbursement program, we will assess what has been paid and then reimburse the employer after the fact at the end of the term. Placements have a minimum of 4 weeks and up to a maximum of 16 weeks per term. It's important to note that we can accommodate full-time or part-time positions. We also can accommodate working from home or remote positions, as well as working in person. We do offer that flexibility through this program. But what is important is that the students are engaged in a form of work integrated learning. So that means that we're looking for students that are undertaking a placement that is aligned with their program of study. So whereas we don't restrict the program of study that the student can be engaged in, the work that they're doing within your organization should be aligned to their program of study. So if we're having a need for a marketing role to be filled within your company, then therefore we're hoping for a marketing student to be able to fill that role. This is part of keeping with the CWIL guidelines and definitions for work integrated learning, right? We're talking about a formal curriculum integration to ensure that the work experience that they're getting aligns with their course of study and their program of study. So from the student standpoint, the students need to be enrolled in a work integrated learning program. And this means that we really want to be offering placements to co-op students. That's really where we're finding the eligibility. And that is why we've brought on Alyssa to speak today about finding an eligible student for funding. So we spoke about them being Canadian citizens, permanent residents, or refugees. We spoke about them being a part of a work integrated learning program. And they are also to be actively enrolled in the school that they're in. So we'll be requesting their proof of enrollment documents. So students that are serving, for example, for the summer term, it's important that they are going back to school in the fall, right? So we're not talking about student placements that are happening at the end of a program. They have to be currently enrolled. These are parts of the documents that we will be requiring from the students as a part of the eligibility documents. So at this point in time, since we're speaking so heavily on students and finding an eligible student, I would like to introduce officially one of our panelists today, Alyssa Kuron, who's going to speak a little bit more about finding a co-op student. She's speaking from the University of Waterloo, and hopefully she'll be able to share some insight on what that process means, how we're able to find an eligible student so that you are able to successfully proceed with an application for funding.
Okay, well, hello, everyone, and thank you so much for having me here today, Camille. I really appreciate the chance to join this conversation. So, as you mentioned, I am with the University of Waterloo's co-op department. I'll do my best to speak kind of in general terms and anything where differentiate where it may be specific to Waterloo or otherwise. And as mentioned earlier on this call, with food processing being such a large part of Canada's manufacturing sector, it really is increasingly important to attract talent to the sector to meet the labors and skill needs for the future. And emerging talent like co-op students are such a great way to build that talent pipeline. So thank you, Camille, for doing such a great job speaking as well to the benefits of hiring co-op, because we're really excited to connect more employers with students. So I'm going to chat briefly about the process, posting jobs to attract eligible students, and happy to answer any questions as well. So kind of along the lines of what we talked about already, co-op, when we think about co-op, it's typically the 4-month work terms that come to mind, and alternating with those study terms. It's really about the work integrated learning and reinforcing the real work and the academic studies together. Depending on the school or program in general, though, there can be longer work terms available, but I'll just kind of keep the 4-month in mind when we're thinking about the SWPP funding. So in general, recruiting happens in the 4-month period prior to each work term. So, and it can go right up to the start of the work term. So right now, there is still time to hire for the summer, that May to August term, at least certainly from us, and I'm sure for many other schools as well. And you can start thinking about that fall hiring too. So it's great that we have the dates for when the SWPP funding applications will be open for that. It's really never a bad time to hire, we always say, because for us and many other schools, we have talent available year round. And when we think about how, kind of the nuts and bolts of it, there's the posting the job. And then there's also a bit to consider around the theory about how to actually attract students who want to apply to the jobs and work with your organization. I'm going to focus a little more on that nuts and bolts side first, but happy to answer any questions at all that may come up. And I get that this can seem kind of overwhelming too if you're first starting out or new to hiring co-op. So hopefully I can alleviate some of that. So when we think about the process, there are options when it comes to posting your job, but what I really recommend is posting directly with the school or schools, could be multiple, that you're interested in hiring from. This helps you reach a targeted audience of students actively seeking co-op opportunities who are most likely to be eligible. So when it comes to being enrolled in those programs and being eligible for the funding based on the criteria that was discussed. So this could be perhaps there's a local college or university that you're familiar with the programs that may align with the work that you have in mind for the students, or you could post more broadly. It all depends on what type of work you're looking for the student to do. So it's great that for this funding, it can be, there's lots of flexibility in the type of roles you can hire for to get funded for your student in the food and beverage processing sector. Our students, like those from many others, can work all across Canada, remote or in person, and many schools have job boards that you can post on. In our case, it's a system called Waterloo Works, and perhaps there's some on this call that have posted on Waterloo Works before. We had previous systems in the past. And often the schools, like for us in particular, as the largest program in the country, co-op program, I should say, specify, we have service teams and support staff to help you with the logistics. So navigating the job boards, how do you post in a way that attracts the best candidate, whether it's certain programs or certain skills, technical or non-technical, depending on what you're looking for. And we can also help, I think a big benefit here is to include the eligibility aspects. So language within the posting, we actually have a statement we can include about that this job will require you to be eligible for SWPP, and kind of referencing what Camille had showed on the screen before. We can add pre-screening questions to make sure students understand that, yes, I understand I must be eligible to these criteria. And we can actually help confirm the enrollment details afterwards too. Our team can help support all of that to really take some of that pressure off. Now, that's posting with the school. There's so much more I could say about that. Students can also apply elsewhere. You can post co-op jobs on your own site, LinkedIn, other job boards as well. Students can apply, and all the kind of linkages can be done after to make sure they're getting co-op credit. But it is, I think, really great to make use of us, those of us on these service teams that can help you to just streamline as much as possible. So just to be aware that there are multiple options. And then really at the end of the day, regardless of how you post, at some point there will be an interview, selecting your preferred candidates, hiring, onboarding, all of those similar things that happen separate from the SWPP aspects. And there is so much I could chat about driving candidates to the posting and making sure you're really attracting the best talent pool. But I think I've just kind of info dumped a little bit, so I might stop there and ask Camille if you have any particular questions or anything you'd like me to go a bit deeper on.
Thank you so much for that, Alyssa. How much information does an employee need to have ready before they come to you? Or are you a part of that needs assessment conversation with them to help them align what they need done with the kind of student that they're looking for?
For an employer to come to us, I'm not sure if you mean me or just my team in general, the team I work with. Yeah, and you can come with as little as you have. It could simply be, I'm not too sure what co-op is. It might work. Maybe I have a ton of seasonal projects this summer and I just really need an extra set of hands. I'm not sure if co-op is right for me, but I'd love to explore. That's wonderful. We have those conversations all the time, and we can go as detailed as needed into how does it work? How would you post your job with us? And make sure you're articulating it in a way that makes sense for the students. Really, any level of information. You don't need a job description written. We have templates and resources. And this is me getting a little Waterloo specific, but I do know that other schools have very similar staff that can help with these same things. So in general, I think you can reach out to any school and start as limited as possible, and we can get you where you need to be and get you all the information.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Alyssa. If there are any other questions that come up, we'll be sure to discuss them at the end of the presentation. I think it would be good for us to move forward and talk about, now that we've talked a little bit about how to find a student, now you found a student, now what? How do we move from hiring a student to actually securing the funding that you're going to need going forward, or accessing funding through the SWPP program? Our application process follows 5 very distinct phases. Right? We start off with receiving the application online. You will log on to our website, SWPP, and then we are able to submit your online application, which will be reviewed. We review our applications at the beginning for employer eligibility and what student information is inputted at that point in time. Right? So we're reviewing the business registration information entered, we're reviewing the industry that the company is in, all to ensure that this is a suitable fit for this funding stream. Once all of that has been reviewed, then we will be able to issue the employer agreement form to the employer for signature. This says that you're participating in the program, that you're going to abide by the terms and conditions of the program, that you're consenting for us to reach out to your students and request their documentation going forward, and that this is now, you're participating as a part of accessing this ESDC funding delivered through Food Processing Skills Canada. Once we've received those documents, then the next step is to reach out to your students, right? So we are validating what is input on the forms. So we are looking for their proof of status. We're looking for, if you've indicated that they're an international student or a domestic student, we're looking for those proof of status in Canada, their permanent resident cards, their passport, etc. We're looking for their proof of enrollment at the university. We're looking for their proof of work integrated learning to say that this is formally integrated into their program. We're ensuring that we have their job offer letters to know that this is a legit placement with your organization. Once we've received all of those documents from you as an employer and from your students, that's the point where we're able to approve and say, yes, this application is eligible for funding through this program, and we will reimburse this placement at the end of the term, right? At the end of the term, we now start to request the next set of documents. We're talking about the financial documents for review. We are not in a position that we're going to be writing a blank check or approving a blank amount for $7,000. As indicated, we are reimbursing, for example, for an increased subsidy placement, 70% of wages up to $7,000. So that means that we're looking at the first pay stub for the term, the last pay stub for the term, and we're assessing all the total gross wages paid for the student for the entire term. We're doing our calculations and getting back to you to say, okay, we've reviewed all of what you've paid this student for this time period. Your placement will be approved for X amount. And then you'll provide us with an invoice, which we will then be able to pay. So this is a quick snapshot of the documents that we will need based on the key steps that we've just discussed. So at the beginning, we start off with the terms and conditions form and the offer letter, which is provided by the employer. Then we reach out to the student to request their agreement and consent form, their proof of status, their proof of enrollment, and their proof of work integrated learning. I just want to add right here about the proof of work integrated learning component, that this is specific to the term, specific to the student. So if we're talking about a summer 2025 application, we're looking for proof of work integrated learning in the form of an unofficial transcript that will say this student is engaged in a co-op work term for summer 2025. So if it's for winter 2025, that wouldn't be eligible for a summer 2025 application. We also issue a form that your students can have completed by the co-op department, stating that this is a formal work integrated learning opportunity and is endorsed by the university, whether it is for credit or not for credit. This is a part of integrating the institution, the academic institution, the employer, and the student to say that this is an experience, right? We have all 3 parties signed on that this is benefiting the student in their academic studies and that it's a partnership. We really try to keep with that CWIL guidelines of what work integrated learning means. And then at the end of the term, the financial documents, the first and last pay stubs, the gross salary form, which we will send to the employer for completion. And once all of that has been approved, then you would send us an invoice for payment. So this is a little bit about how we calculate the subsidy. As I had said, we're dealing with, if we're looking at an increased subsidy, we're looking at 70% of the gross wages paid For the period, I would like to say that our team is pretty responsive in walking our employers through any issues that we're having with any documents that are received. We'll be able to identify if there's something that we didn't need, if there's a pay stub that we needed a different one, and be able to engage in that kind of way to ensure that we're providing you with the best support so that you're able to access this stream of funding. We've had very big successes with this program in the past, and I just wanted to share a little bit about what that looks like from looking at some of our data from last year. So 97% of, or this is from survey data administered for summer 2024, and I'm looking forward to collating some more information for the summer 2025 term. But 97% of the employers that participated and received funding were very satisfied or satisfied with their students' performance. 78% said that they would hire their student again in the future. 99% of the employers said that their placement had benefited the company. 73% said that had they not had funding, they probably wouldn't have hired a student. And 95% of the employers said that they would consider using SWPP to support their HR planning. So you know the seasonality of your business, you know when you're going to have your peak periods, you know when you need that additional support of 1 worker, 2 workers for whatever period. You put that into your HR planning so you get the support that you need when you need it. So now you know the academic terms, you know what your seasonality of your work is going to be like. You can plan accordingly so that you're able to adjust to the needs of your company. From the student perspective, 95% of the students were satisfied or very satisfied with their completed placement. 100% of the students said that the placement was related to their field of study. I'm just going to skip down in the interest of time to this last figure here at the bottom, where 65% of the students will now consider careers in the food and beverage industry. This is students that had not considered the food and beverage industry before. So now they've had their work placement and now they're considering switching to a job in the food and beverage industry. As Jennifer had said earlier in our discussion, it's a growing industry, right? And there's always a need for people. And so we're happy that this creates an opportunity to open their doors, to open their minds and perspectives to considering this industry as a viable career option after they graduate. That's all we are looking for and hoping for and able to support the industry with. I'm now going to pass over to Sam, who is one of our participating employers. I think it's one thing for me to sit here and to speak about what the experience has been from the surveys that were received, but we thought it would have been great to have one of our participating employers share a little bit of insight on what the process is like from her end and how the students have helped her company, help the company grow, what kind of roles that they're engaged in, and to share whatever insights that she can. I know that I've personally been working with Sam for the past 2 going on 3 years. So Sam, over to you. What insights can you share with us this afternoon?
Awesome. Thank you so much, Camille. Thank you to you and the team for having me today. It's so great to be able to speak about this. It's a program that we've been, like you mentioned, using for quite a few years, I think longer than I've been at FGF. So it's definitely been a positive experience for us. So a little bit about kind of who we are and how this program works with us. So we're a food manufacturing company, so we're quite large organization. Our student program is over 130 students, so we have quite a large, robust program. And we've been using FPSC for quite a few years now in terms of just helping us with, you know, subsidizing those student wages so we can continue to hire more students, right? Our particular program does not require a student to be domestic versus international, so we don't always have funding for students, but the funding is something that really does help, and it's something that we do every single term. So like Alyssa mentioned, we do actually only post our roles with post-secondary institutions. You won't find our roles on our website or LinkedIn. It does provide that exclusivity to the students. It is a selling feature in that sense because they do appreciate that very much. It's a competitive industry to get into. So students do appreciate knowing that they're only competing with their peers at school rather than, you know, external factors as well. So we follow the same kind of idea that Alyssa kind of laid out. We post our roles with our school partners. And then we'll go through our interview process and select the desired candidate. and then offer. So we go through a process with all of our new hires to find out who is eligible for funding. This is an internal process that we do, and all of our eligible students, I work directly with Camille and her team to get everything up and running. So it's pretty straightforward once you've done it once or twice. And if anything is confusing, I can absolutely guarantee Camille is always just an email away. And I'm not just saying that because we're on the call together. I genuinely mean that. So honestly, once you've gotten 1 or 2 applications in the process, it's a little bit time consuming in terms of adding the information. But once you've done it once or twice, it's quite easy and straightforward. It's really just on us as an employer to ensure that that student is eligible before we're putting it in, because then you're just kind of wasting your own time putting it in if they're not. So ensuring they meet the criteria of being a Canadian citizen and also, or domestic or PR or refugee, and also making sure that they're in that co-op or WIL program. From our perspective, we continuously put in applications. I think on average, we do maybe 15 to 20 every term, and ranging between 5,000 to 7,000 in terms of the application funding that we get back. So definitely a bonus for us. This is huge in terms of helping us continue to grow the program and hire more students. We have seen a very big turnout of students transitioning into full-time team members here with FGF. Obviously, that's the point of our program. It's something that we're very passionate about. And we're really seeing that happen here. And even students who have joined us as co-ops, they'll come back for another term the year after or in a few terms later. So we see the benefit of having the co-op students. The program has grown about 3 times as big since I started. And the funding is just another additional piece that helps us continue to grow the program, especially, you know, with the current market and how things are. Any little bit does help. So it's nice to be able to continue to grow and see how we can help enrich students' lives and help them kind of determine what they want to do for their career. And funding is just like a little piece of our puzzle that we're really appreciative for. And like I said, it's not a challenging piece to do. It does take a little bit of time and dedication, but once you've put that time in, it's absolutely worth it. And you never have to worry about not knowing what to do or being stuck, because there is a great deal of support from the team.
Thank you so much for that, Sam. I wanted to ask one more question of you. So if we're talking about the summer term, when did you start your process of trying to find your students for summer?
So we always hire 1 semester in advance. So we're usually recruiting about 4 months in advance of the start. So we've already started getting our requests in for our fall term. We'll start posting those in May. Obviously, we're hiring throughout the term. You're not going to hire everybody in May, not for us anyway, since we have so many roles. If we had far less roles, we'd probably be finishing everything up in May. But we always start 1 term ahead. So you're always planning 4 months kind of pockets. And then what we like to do as well is we'll reach out to Camille and the team and say, okay, we have this many. When's the earliest we can start putting in our applications? And the deadline or the date that Camille mentioned earlier, that's the date we're going to start putting in our applications for fall. So we just set that date and get it ready. And then, if there's an error with an application, a student doesn't end up working out, or that student doesn't end up being eligible, we'll remove that application later. And that's on us for figuring that out later. But for the most part, everything usually works out really well. And we want to make sure we meet those deadlines to ensure we can get that funding and then continue with our recruitment every 4 months.
Okay. So I think what I'm hearing from the both of you, from Alyssa and also from Sam, is just the importance of planning and how important it is to be ahead of the game, right? And from our perspective, that certainly is the same sentiment that we would want to share. It's important. So yes, it is possible to apply once the term has started. Yes, it is possible to apply later on. However, the purpose of this conversation that we're having today is to try to give you, as an employer, a surefire way of actually getting through with the funding that you need. So yes, you can apply on job boards and you can post your jobs on LinkedIn. However, there is no guarantee that you're going to get the students that you need that are eligible for funding through this program. So I think the major takeaways from what you both are sharing is start planning early and reach out to the co-op departments as soon as you can to assess your needs and get those applications in. Because ideally, and from my perspective as managing the SWPP program on our side, we want to get those applications in 2-3 months before the start of the term. We want to be able to give you an approval to say everything is in order, all is done. The term has now started. We will talk to you at the end of the term when we just need to request your financial documents. So if we have not yet started your summer applications for this term, for this summer 2025, I would encourage you to start as soon as possible. The summer term does start in just a few weeks. It runs from May to August. It is not too late. We are still able to facilitate. We're still able to help. We're still here and willing to support. But for planning for future, now that we've passed the summer hurdle, let us already start planning towards what we're going to do for fall. We want to be able to secure the funding, and we want to be able to support you as best as we can. And the biggest tip here is time needs to be on your side. Thank you so much, both of you.
Sorry, Camille, I was
Sam?
going to add one thing, I think,
Yes,
which is kind of, I've seen some questions come, I know you're going to do Q&A after, but in terms of students, so like, it depends obviously what school you're getting students from and how long that student is available for co-op. But when we hire students, it ranges from 4, 8, or 12 months. So if we have a student on for 12 months and they're eligible for funding, we know we can apply for each of those 3 terms that they're on with us. And you don't have to repeat everything. A lot of the documents that you need to get are the same, like their proof of citizenship and things like it's a lot easier when you have a student who's on with you for a few terms in a row to submit those documents or get everything organized. And it's kind of just second nature at that point. Obviously, that's not always the case for some students. So you can get, you know, multiple students for 4 months, depending on the needs and what your business is doing. But there's always different ways to do this, and there's different kind of criteria to meet with the students. So you have different avenues you can explore. If you don't want a short-term, you know, placement for a student, you want 8 months, you can do 2 terms. So I know for us personally, we're very flexible. It depends on what our leader's looking for and how long they want a student on the team, versus some teams only like 4-month terms. So we always do 4 months for them, whereas other teams only want 12-month terms. So we only find students who are available for 12 months. So our specific, you know, requirements range, but with funding, it does make it a little bit easier when it's the same student for 12 months because we know it's consistency for them.
Thank you so much for that. And I would like to add that, yes, that is something that we're able to facilitate. We are able to allow for consecutive terms. However, it must be noted that these are separate applications that each have to go through their eligibility requirements. So just like we had talked about the proof of work integrated learning for the summer 2025 term, if the student is going to be with you for a 12-month period, we would then also need proof of work integrated learning for the fall 2025 term. For that application, proof of work integrated learning for the winter 2026 term for that specific application. Each term is processed independently, and so that's something to keep in mind. But if you have the school on board to sign off on those forms, then absolutely, we would be happy to accommodate placements for consecutive terms. Thanks, Sam. Okay, so that has been a wonderful bit of information. The beautiful thing is that in addition to the funding that we're able to offer, there is a plus in participating in SWPP+. So we also include a curriculum at no cost to you as an employer and or your students, so that you can access to support onboarding, improve your current skills, and enhance knowledge about the industry. SWPP+ is providing additional job-ready skills training for students so that they're fully primed for work-integrated learning success at your business. Training is available at no cost to your company for participating students, and employers have access to all courses through FPSC's Institute and Learning Recognition Framework. SWPP+ is also supporting employers in building an exceptional workplace culture committed to continuous education. The SWPP+ employer curriculum has been developed for supervisors to grow in their positions and provide the maximum support to employee teams. Training is available again at no cost for Canadian food and beverage manufacturing businesses through this program or participating through this program. So we're not just about providing you with funding, which I think is great, but we're also helping to equip you so that you can have a successful placement, so that it can ease some of the onboarding processes, that you can upskill your workers and train your team so that you're working with a more effective team going forward. I think that pretty much wraps up a lot of what we wanted to talk about in terms of the SWPP program and funding and the requirements. And I would like to just take a minute now to pause and try and delve into some of the questions that we have coming in. As a part of the registration, we received a few questions as a part of that registration process. I am going to go through a few of them since we do have time in our schedule. The first question is, does FPSC have processes to connect industry and co-op students? So we, through FPSC, through the Student Work Placement Program, we are not a job placement agency, and we do not directly engage with creating that placement or finding students. But we will always recommend, as we're discussing in this forum, that the employer go directly to the post-secondary institution co-ops department and find an eligible student that would be able to meet the needs of their organization. Another question was posed about part-time work. And yes, we do cover part-time work and full-time placements through this funding. And this one I wanted to talk about. This question came in from an applicant or someone that's participating here this afternoon. It says that the application process seems so complicated. I was approved twice, but could never navigate to completion. Now, of course, this is a conversation in detail that you would have to look at each application to know exactly what the issues were with the application. But there are a few things that could cause that to happen that I wanted to address. The first step is that once we deal with employer eligibility, you are a part of the program and we're prepared to proceed with an application for funding. But an application cannot be approved until we have received all of the student eligibility documents, right? So you may have submitted an application, but submitting an application does not automatically guarantee that you will be able to access the funding if the student is not eligible for funding. The other thing that could possibly arise that could lead to feeling like your placement was approved but not reimbursed is if there was an issue with the financial documents submitted. Usually our team does reach out to clarify any issues, request follow-ups for submission of financial documents. I certainly would be open to having a more detailed one-on-one conversation about what happened with any previous placements. But that usually tends to be it. When you submit an application, that doesn't automatically guarantee you funding through the program. We do have to go through the eligibility requirements and that full document checklist before we're able to approve. I'm going to see if I can take a few more questions from the chat to see what we have here. Tiffany or Marwan, if there are any questions that specifically jump out at you that you would like to share. I see one here. Does the employer have to submit 3 applications if they're hiring one student for 12-month work term, or only one, noting that it is for a 12-month work term? For a 12-month work term, that would be 3 separate applications, one for the summer, one for the fall, and one for the winter, and each application is processed independently.
We have one question that says, what kind of students can we hire? They should be from food-related courses. Is it eligible to hire students from SWPP?
Yes. We can have students from SWPP. The students do not have to be directly in food-related courses, but the employer has to be a food-related business. It has to be a food-related employer. We recognize it takes a wide range of any kind of program to make any organization work. So it's okay if the student is studying accounting, they're studying marketing, they're studying those kinds of things, that's fine, as long as they're able to develop those applicable skills within the work placement that you have them in within your company. Yeah, there is no limit. I saw another question here about if there's a limit on the number of students that you can hire, which is a great question, and I'll be happy to talk about that a little bit. The limit on the number of students that you can hire. Currently, ESDC has something called their net new requirement, which states that this program's objective is essentially to increase the number of students that you are hiring, right? Since you were, if you're comparing your numbers to what you were hiring before you got access to funding. So let's say you have hired in the last fiscal year, we're dealing with an April to March fiscal year. So April 2024 to March 2025, you have hired 2 students. What the ESDC's net new requirement says is that for this new fiscal year, from April 2025 to March 2026, how many students do you plan to hire? If previously you have hired 2 students and this fiscal year you want to hire 2 students, then they're saying that when we're providing you with funding, you're not showing a projected increase in the number of students that you're trying to hire. They want to see growth. Now, your baseline year does not change. So if you hired 2 students last year and this year you want to hire 4 students, then that means that increase of 2 is the funding that you're able to access. You're able to submit 2 applications for funding for this fiscal year, right? If you want to hire 3 students, then it means that you're able to hire that 1 additional application for this fiscal year. But the ESDC wants to see a projected increase in the number of students that you've hired prior to when you were able to access funding. Now, if this is somehow problematic, it's something that we will be happy to walk you through and talk through a little bit more. We can always schedule a meeting and discuss what your company needs are and those kinds of things and walk you through submitting that kind of stuff. But your baseline number doesn't change, which means that for employers that have never hired a student before, you can submit as many applications as you need to. There's no cap on the number of applications that you can submit for the year. And your baseline year does not change. So if last year, before you got funding, you hired 2 students, this year, if you want to hire 3, you can get the funding for the increase of 1. If next year you want to hire 4, you can get funding for the increase of 2, because your baseline will always remain at 2 as a year before you started getting funding. Tiffany, any other specific questions that I can address before we wrap up for today?
We have one employer saying, how can I make my students qualify for the program if the placement has already started?
Okay, I would say they would have to submit an application. We will walk them through the documentation that they would need. In the event that the student is not in a formal co-op program, we are able to provide them with a form. So we are assuming that the student there are some non-negotiables, right? The student is a domestic student. That is not something that we can change at this stage of the game. And the student is enrolled in a post-secondary institution. Those are the absolute non-negotiables. For the co-op work placement, if they're not enrolled in a formal co-op program, or if they are undertaking a placement that is not for credit, then we would have to provide the student with a form to take to the post-secondary institution for them to sign off on the placement as being a work integrated learning opportunity. That is non-negotiable for us. We have to have the placement endorsed by the school before we're able to provide funding. And this is why we want to ensure that we are approaching applications from the right channel and encouraging our employers to go directly to the co-op departments to find their students, so as to avoid issues like this where they've now hired a student, the student is in the role, but now they're not eligible for funding because the school will not sign off on the placement for whatever reason.
All right, and we have another one. If we have multiple sites, do we need an application for each site?
Yes, you do. Each application is submitted independently, and a part of the identifying information on your application will be your location. So yes, you'll be processing for each independent location.
Okay, and we have one last question. Can the employer submit an application before they receive the acceptance of an offer made to a student?
They can submit an application. However, the application cannot be approved until the student has been hired and we've been able to verify all of the student eligibility documents. So if a student isn't hired, you can still submit an application for funding, but it will not be approved until we're able to get all documents in verifying the student information entered. I think we have time for maybe one last one.
Oh, we get another question. We have one. employer that's asking, what is the eligibility for the employers to fix the limit of applications?
I'm not sure I'm fully understanding that question, but I do
So
think that
what-
probably requires
what-
a meeting.
Yeah.
And
Is there any way to qualify for the employers to confirm their eligibility?
they can submit an application. We can begin the reviewing process and we can let them know based on what we're able to determine about their business registration and their industry involvement. Okay, thank you so much, Tiffany, and thank you so much for all of the questions. I hope we have been able to answer a lot of the questions that you've been able to pose and that we've been able to provide some insight on not just funding, but how to find eligible students so that you're actually able to access the funding that is offered through the SWPP program. We will be providing the deck at the end as a follow-up email, and also a short survey. If you have any questions for Waterloo specifically, you can reach out to Alyssa where that is concerned. And regarding more information for Food Processing Skills Canada, who we are, what we do, or programs, or to reach out to me directly, we've provided our program information here. Jennifer, do you have any closing words?
No, thank you. It's a lot of great questions. Definitely great job to everybody. And we're hoping to see a lot more applications come through, and yeah, work with any of your academic partners to try to find those students and anything you may need. Oh, I might be frozen here.
Oh, we see you. We can see
Oh,
you.
you're good, Jen.
Oh, you do? Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. If you have any questions, just let us know. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you. And thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.